Today's video is sponsored by GadgetDiscoveryClub.com. Stay tuned for an exclusive offer.
Oh, thank God.
Father Paris.
Yes. You the Catalan's guy?
Yeah, that's me.
Thank God. Thank God you're here.
Well, I mean, it came as soon as I heard. I heard there was something crazy going on around here.
Oh, yeah. It's a...
Well, I mean, what are we looking at here?
Yes. You may need this.
Oh, no, thanks. I had too much religion for lunch already. No, I can't. Not even another little.
You first. No. Yes. It asked for you. Specifically. It requires a very specific exorcism for a very specific demon.
Okay, all right. What's the plan? What are we doing?
You have to answer 10 unanswered questions about the Exorcist series.
Yeah, I guess I kind of figured that's where we're going with this. Okay, let's do it.
When an excellent day to answer some questions.
Question number 1.
Is the demon the devil?
Right, so on the odd chance that you don't know, The Exorcist is about a young girl named Regan McNeil who is possessed by some sort of demonic entity. But what is it? What is the creature?
And I'm the devil.
Well, that settles that. I mean, that was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I thought that would take a lot longer.
Turns out it's not that simple, since we know very clearly that the demon is a liar, and it seems unlikely that it would be so flippant about its true identity. Besides, would the devil really be interested in such a low-stakes affair, such as the single possession of a girl and the wavering beliefs of a single priest? It also seems to go by the identity of Captain Howdy at one point through the Ouija board, so it's also obvious that it likes to toy around with its true moniker. But there are clues in the film and the book, and I'm actually going to be a bit controversial. So let's talk about what's known first. We know that Marin is on an archaeological dig in the intro of the film, and they discover a statue and some artifacts that are representative of Pazuzu, an actual mythological being, and has a seeming premonition of evil. As a little background, Marin had previously fought a demon and barely survived, so when he gets word of Regan's predicament, he realizes that the premonition is coming true. While fighting the demon, he sees the statue of Pazuzu, and based on this, there's the general consensus that it's our demon's identity. But here's the controversy. I'm not so sold on that. First of all, neither the film nor the novel it's based on identify the possessor as such, and the movie never even says the name. The book says that the statue is Pazuzu, but the movie doesn't, leaving it unsaid until the second movie. And, in fact, in the film version, the only thing connecting the thing in the bedroom to the prequel in Iraq is the appearance of the statue in the bedroom, although the book has a little more reference to it. But here's the thing. Why would the creature be so obvious about its identity here? I mean, if we accept that as I'm telling Marin who I really am, then what's the difference between this and the earlier confession as being the devil? I think everyone just writes that off as it's lying to throw them off, but why aren't we assuming that the appearance of the statue isn't the same? So here's where I get to that controversy I mentioned. I don't think this is Pazuzu. First of all, Pazuzu and the Banshees wasn't just some run-of-the-mill demon. No, according to Assyrian legend, the guy was a full-on deity. He was the personification of the southwestern wind and was basically a demon king. But here's why I think he's not our guy. Pazuzu was known as being a pretty evil being, but also a protector. He safeguarded pregnant women and mothers, and women would often wear his image to ward off other demons that they were afraid of, which is why the museum guy says evil against evil when they're looking at it. The Zeus was known for fighting other demons, not preying on innocent young girls. But here's the deal. The demon in Regan clearly has some telepathic abilities. It knows about Karis and his fears and concerns about his mother enough to prey on them. You're telling me that it wouldn't be able to look into Marin's mind, see the encounter in Iraq, and then use that imagery to psych him out, trying to spur on a heart attack, the exact thing that happens? Besides, like I said, the devil wouldn't really have much interest in such a small affair as this, so why would a full-on deity? What interest would such a powerful being have in such a small event? I think that Marin knows this, since we see in their early encounter in part 2 that the creature claims to be Pazuzu, and then he sees the images in Iraq, and yet still doesn't refer to the thing by its name. He insists on merely calling it the demon, not the devil. Not Pazuzu, just the demon, which makes me think that this sucker is neither of those, none of them. It's literally just some minor demon, some idle riffraff of hell looking to cause a commotion. It's clearly not that powerful since it has limitations here and doesn't win in the end, so it can't be that strong of a being, and it's not. In fact, I'm pretty sure I could beat the sucker up. Question number 2.
Was Dennings inappropriate with Regan?
This is one I've seen a few times online, so I thought that it needed addressing. So here's how it's laid out. Burke Dennings is the director of the film that Regan's mother is starring in. They were also possibly dating. One night, he's left in care of the little girl, babysitting her, and when Chris returns home, they find her alone with her window open. Turns out that Dennings is dead, his body found at the bottom of their steps outside the window with his head twisted all the way around. It's made clear that he got there by way of the demon in Regan, and the police note that she was an unlikely suspect since she wouldn't have the strength to perform that act. But that brings up a different question. What was Burke doing in her room in the first place? So, there's been a number of theorists that discuss the themes of the movie and the book and state that it points to a documentation of sexual abuse. And that's certainly an interesting take. Here's what's used as arguments for it. Burke is an eccentric guy with alcohol issues. He's often making rude or inappropriate comments. He doesn't mind pushing people's buttons, like calling Carl a Nazi. And he was in Regan's bedroom before she died. It's discussed that there's similarities in background and naming between Burke and Roman Polanski, and we all know what happened there. And it's then pointed out that there's a cut from Burke asking what's for dessert to Regan in her bed.
What's for dessert?
The elements of sexual abuse are drawn from her issues, starting with a shaking bed and posts that are phallic in nature, and Chris wearing large dark glasses as an abuse victim might do. There's also the peeing on the floor scene, as urination on the floor may be a symptom of abuse. And then there's the demon itself using Burke's voice.
You know what she did? Your king daughter?
And its general usage of sexual terms to create a theme throughout the film. But here's the thing. I personally think a lot of this is simply reading something into the film that you want to be there as opposed to something that was intentional. I mean, saying that Chris is wearing large glasses like an abused person would make no sense because Chris is literally wearing those glasses to cover the injury that her daughter gave her. It has a story purpose for being there, not a symbolic one. Besides that, the whole thing only works if the event is symbolic, but it's not. The demon is real in the movie. There's no way to paint this as a metaphoric allegory in which the true villain is abused, since it's clearly a literal tale of a demon possession. The demon is using the sexual terms in order to antagonize. It's not something from Regan. Besides, any of the indications about Dennings seems to be drawing a line from A to 7. Yes, he's rude with some drinks in him, like he likes to stir the pot and get under people's skin. None of these things indicate the propensity to assault a child. In fact, earlier in the film, when discussing Burke with her mother, Regan seems pretty much at ease with him and only shows a concern that her mom might marry him and displace her dad. That's it. And she doesn't seem to have any issues with the man himself, and even says that he's welcome to come to her party. Now, the only real thing that I personally think could hint at something improper is the whole, what was he even doing in her room in the first place question. But here's the thing. We have zero indication of what went on there. The only thing that we know about the incident is that Burke was killed in the room and tossed out the window. So we know that he was in the room and nothing else. There is zero indication of how long he was there. It could very easily have been as simple as a possessed Regan calling out, "Burke, come here." Plus, I hate to say it, but Blatty really wasn't that subtle of a writer. He's really good at what he does, but deep subtext usually isn't what that is. His metaphor is a bit more on the surface, so this type of thing isn't normally what he does. So I think that Burke, although a bit of a drunken fool, can't really be called an abuser. Question number 3.
How does Regan survive her head spinning around?
Oh, you know the scene. It's possibly the most famous bit from The Exorcist. A possessed Regan spins her head around to greet her mother and talks to her. It's super effective and very memorable. But here's the question. How the hell did she survive that? I mean, her freaking head spun all the way around. Wouldn't that break her neck? Isn't the very reason why it's so memorable the reason why it's also unbelievable? After all, it's not an actual demon. It's a demon in a human body, right? Isn't it still susceptible to what happens to it? I mean, look at the ending. When the demon is in Karis, he kills himself, and it seems to be the way to go. The body dies, and the demon is either stuck in him and dies or is forced out to whatever, but the form is still vulnerable. So why wouldn't spinning the head 360 degrees cause death? I mean, in the TV series, it's actually shown to be quite fatal and is the demon's favorite method of finishing off its victims. It turns their neck all the way around until it snaps and kills them. And it's only because Regan intervenes with her daughter that it doesn't happen there as well.
Time to give the people what they want.
Casey. Casey, no!
Get back.
And yeah, TV show, I'm with you. We want to see that noggin twist, but the people also want an explanation. And I think there is one. I should mention that there's 2 spins in the film. One is an 180-degree turn, and the other is a full 360. Either one qualifies for what we're talking about here, and it's from a moment of Marin's dialogue. He tells Karis that the demon is a liar and a deceiver. Both of those things, liar and a deceiver. You'd think that he'd be able to suffice with just the word liar there, right? Except if the demon has a way to deceive that's not a lie, not verbal. And that's in being able to deceive through other senses, such as seeing things that aren't there. It obviously has ways to make you see things, such as that Pazuzu statue, and also hear things, such as Karis' mother's voice.
Dime, why you do this to me?
I don't think that making people think that her head is twisting around is that far out of a similar repertoire. Because let's face it, if you're taking the TV show into consideration for continuity or not, the ending of the movie also shows that physical damage is still a factor. So it's a good bet that what we're seeing is not what we think what we're seeing.
You know what she did?
She didn't spin her head the full way around, that's for sure. Question number 4.
Who beautifully vandalized the statue?
So there's a moment in the earlier part of the movie, before Regan is possessed, where a priest enters the church and finds the area desecrated. They've messed with the Mary statue and given it like Madonna cone titties, and this like pointy penis thing, and blood and paint all over it. Now, there really aren't any red herring suspects thrown out or anything, so it seemed likely that the easy answer would be Regan. But how did she do it? Keep in mind, this is before she's like possessed. At this point, we only know that she's acting up and lashing out, but she's not exactly in full swing now. In fact, in the regular version of the film, we hadn't even really seen her show any personality shifts, and she's mostly normal. It's only the director's cut that features her with any signs of direct possession by now. But the movie never even really addresses it after it's shown. It's mentioned once or twice, but not in a "who did that" discussion. The novel, however, goes more into it and spells something out that is hinted at here. So, in this slightly earlier scene, we see Regan making these little clay sculptures. Later, on the statue, the added body parts appear to be a similar type of clay, and it's likely that's the explanation as to how it was done. And in the book, Lieutenant Kinderman, investigating, takes some of the paint from her clay doodles and compares it to paint from the desecration, and sure enough, it matches, implying very strongly that the girl was the culprit. So, that leaves only a few possibilities. One is that the demon did it with its ability to affect the physical world, although that seems to be a bigger power set than we've previously seen from the thing, so I don't think that's likely. The second option is that a non-possessed Regan did it at the behest of Captain Howdy, like she was playing the board and she did it after being asked to. Problem there is that Regan seems so innocent and incapable of such mischief on her own that it would be out of character. So the third and most likely option is that the demon fully possessed her and did it itself. Now, again, if you just want the standard cut, this seems odd considering that it hasn't taken control of her quite yet, but if you watch the extended version and see her behavior to doctors, this seems to be the most likely choice, although personally I don't think she did a good job. That penis is just way too small. Question number 5.
Why does tap water hurt the demon?
So there's a point in time where some of the people involved don't necessarily believe that there's anything supernatural going on, and one of those people is Father Karras. The movie makes a point to tell you that he's losing his faith, so clearly he's going to be the one that's a touch skeptical that there's a legit demon at work. And in order to receive an exorcism through the church, there's a number of tests that must be gone through. After sitting with Regan and questioning her, he sees some instances that seem possibly supernatural and others that may not be. But when he finally splashes her with holy water, the demon screams out in pain. Right afterwards, he reveals to Chris that the water is not holy at all and is just regular tap water. But hell, maybe it was just reacting to the amount of lead in it. But regardless, this seems to make Karras think that the possession is faked and says that exorcism wouldn't be permitted. Now, here's where my question comes in, because the clear and obvious answer here is that the demon is messing with him. It gives mixed signals to him the entire time. It pulls the drawer, then refuses to do it again, causing Karras to think it might be a fluke and not an actual power. It speaks in Latin, something Regan shouldn't be able to do, but then it can't seem to converse, meaning it likely doesn't understand. It could just be memorized words. When she switches to French, the words are gibberish. She says,
La plume de ma tante.
a beginner's French phrase that's grammatically incorrect and often used as a joke. Then there's the holy water. It knows it's not real. It can read his mind, remember? But here's what I don't get. It's assumed that the demon does these things in order to trick Karras, but also to avoid the rite of exorcism. After all, if Karras told the church that it reacted to tap water, then they surely wouldn't allow one, which you'd think would suit the demon just fine. But it's made clear a little later on that Marin is the ultimate target. In fact, in that very scene, when Regan is talking backwards, she says the name But if it's trying to get him there and wants to match wits with him, then why make it seem like the exorcism isn't needed? Maybe because it definitely wants Marin to be there, but not quite yet. After all, when the backwards message is reversed, one of the things that it says is,
Give us time!
I said earlier that it was messing with him, and that's just what it's doing, wearing him down and making him doubt himself. But ultimately, it knew that he would eventually discover his message. And that's its trap. Once Karras hears that recording, not only does he know that an exorcism is 100% needed, but he knows the man to call, which is precisely what the demon wants. It's positioned it to go exactly the way it wants, when it wants, but also making sure to have some fun while doing it. I hate to interrupt this at such a crucial juncture, but it's actually in the exorcism ritual. Step 4, pause for sponsored message. And I guess that makes sense because it's said that malevolent human possessing demons absolutely hate the Gadget Discovery Club, although everyone else in the world loves it, including me. Like, I got this new box yesterday and was super excited to pop it open, and imagine my surprise when it turned out to be the audio box and contained these sleek Neura buds, which was the best case scenario because I can't tell you how essential that good buds are around this house. I mean, how else am I going to watch some of these 80s slashers with little kid ears nearby? I mean, heaven forbid she hear that violence. And I mean, I guess I probably should do something about the visual part as well, but oh well. And let me tell you, I'm particular about earbuds because apparently I have sensitive cartilage, but these suckers are comfortable and have noise canceling features as well. And you can join the club as well, since it's easy to do on their site. All you have to do is go to gadgetdiscoveryclub.com and pick your options. Do you want quarterly, 1 box, annual, 4 boxes? Each box contains from 1 to 4 different gadgets, and you can get it for yourself or for a gift. And on the site, you can cancel or change your order at any time. And here's the scoop. If you go right now to gadgetdiscoveryclub.com/movie timelines, you can get a great discount of $20 off of the quarterly plan, the annual plan, or any gift. Just use the discount code Movie Timelines. Question number 6.
Who put the crucifix under the pillow?
This is funny because it's such a little thing in the movie, but it's become one of the bigger questions that I see thrown around out there. But there's a bit where there's a crucifix under Reagan's pillow, and Chris confronts Carl the butler about it and asks if it was him, something he denies. But did he do it? There's the possibility that it was Reagan herself, possessed, trying to push her mom to seek out religious help, which is what she would end up doing. Some believe it was Burke Dennings, saying that he could have done it to get a reaction, knowing Chris's feelings about religion. This is what led to him getting tossed out the window. It could have either been Sharon or Willie, but they both deny it, so it could be anybody. If you're listening to William Peter Blatty, there's a definite answer. He said that it was definitely Carl, and that he put the crucifix there because he's Catholic. There was a moment that was in the script, but ultimately wasn't filmed, in which Carl would make the sign of the cross on himself to back this up. But without it, there's no evidence to prove that it was him. Or is there? Actually, believe it or not, I think there's proof in the movie that Carl is our culprit for the crucifix. Here's how it breaks down. Chris finds the crucifix and confronts Carl about it on the stairs. She's standing downstairs with it when Kinderman shows up, and she places it on the table right here. The next time we see that table, it's gone. And when Chris goes up the stairs, Reagan is using it like a pelvic plunger. So how did the crucifix even get there? It's possible that she snuck down the stairs and grabbed it while Mom and the lieutenant were chatting, but there's another answer. You notice that this whole time, Carl is absent. The last time that we saw him was when Chris set the crucifix on the table. But check this out. When Chris is attacked in the room, we see Sharon and Winnie come running, but they're closed out. But where's Carl? But what if I told you he's right here? That's the bottom of a shoe and a hand on the floor beside Reagan's bed. When Chris set the crucifix on the table, he picked it up and intended to put it right back under that pillow. However, the demon had other ideas and knocked him out and took it from him and then used it like a Kandarian tree branch. Question number 7.
Where does the demon go at the end?
So this is an interesting one here because since the Exorcist continuity has been rewritten so many times, there's a lot of variables. The demon is in Reagan, obviously. It's the entire point of the movie. And after the finale, after Marin dies, Karras loses it a bit and attacks. During the scuffle, he tells the demon to take him instead, which it then does. But before he can do anything, Damien is able to regain control momentarily and throw himself out the window, falling to his death. But what happens to the demon at this point? Considering that it was taking over Reagan earlier, why not just jump back into her? And if it chose not to, then where did it go? So first up, we have to discuss what happens next because the story was continued, but everything takes the Texas Chainsaw route, and it seems like every sequel ignores the others. Part 2 is seemingly ignored by Part 3, although it's vaguely possible that they exist together. And then, of course, there's 2 different prequels that don't really expand the story. But when they did the Exorcist TV show, it ignores all the others and is a direct continuation of the first film. And the upcoming Believer film does the same. So it's just sort of a choose-your-own-adventure kind of thing. And I actually believe that focusing on what the demon did next is a bit of a dead end. The answer is there in the film. So this is a twofold question, and it's about why the demon didn't just go back into Reagan, and also why it didn't just jump into, I don't know, anyone else that was nearby and just continue its reign of terror. But I do want to eliminate the option that it's stuck inside Karras as he dies. It can get out of him just as easily as it did Reagan. So as soon as the host was unusable, it left. But why not go into someone else? Well, one option is that it can't. It's likely that the demon needs some sort of invitation or pathway into your spirit for it to possess you. Reagan allowed it in after the tampering with the Ouija board, and Damien directly asked it to take him. So it's possible that since no one else around had given it any sort of access, that it just had no available souls to corrupt. But I think there's a better reason, and one that fits the theme of the film more. Keep in mind the discussion earlier between Karras and Marin, where Marin says that the point is to make us despair and reject the possibility that God could love us. And also note what I said earlier about how Marin was the demon's ultimate goal, and you'll see that Reagan was never the point. Possessing Reagan wasn't the idea that the demon was seeing through. So there's no need to get back into her. Taking over a little girl in DC was all about 2 things: revenge on Marin, and then adding in the despair of Karras. Marin was mission number 1. Failing that, ruining his younger partner would be a consolation prize. Because, let's face it, that demon could not be happy that his greatest enemy died of a simple heart attack. You know that wasn't its choice, so when that happened, its plan was already half shot. Even though the priest was dead, it wasn't what it wanted. It wanted Marin ruined and debased, not dead. When Karras comes back in and it's giggling, that's not a genuine expression. It's not laughing about the death, but it's taunting Karras, trying to drag him further down. I think it's achieved its goal when Karras loses control and invites him in, and it takes the bait as a way to complete its conquest of the holy man. However, when Karras jumps out the window and kills himself, it shows that he's still fighting back, still strong. So, now, at this point, the demon is lost. Even though its opponents are both dead, it failed to make them despair and give up. They never lost faith, and in fact, it appears as if Karras is restored. So, there's no point in going back into Reagan or even someone else. It knows it's lost, so it just tucks its tail between its legs and head back to whatever hell dimension it's from in the first place. Question number 8.
Exorcist 2? What the hell?
So in Exorcist 2, there's Okay, let me start with that. Yeah, no. Yeah, I guess I uh, uh, I don't know. I mean, your guess is as good as mine.
I really don't know either.
Question number 9.
Is there a secret sequel to The Exorcist?
So this one is pretty cool, and it's not one that I think a lot of people know. And I know that it's not really a question that people have, and it's more a touch of cool trivia. But we're talking about it. But we've already mentioned the follow-ups to the first film, and I think most people know about those. Like I said, there's 2 and 3, and then a prequel double whammy and TV show, and of course this new trilogy that they're doing. But out of all of that, there's another person to consider. Sure, we know that the recently passed William Friedkin directed the first movie and did so amazingly, but he didn't write it. That was handled by another William Peter Blatty, and he also wrote the novel that the film was based on. And, as you probably know, Blatty also wrote and directed Exorcist 3, which was adapted from another of his novels, one called Legion, which became the third film's subtitle. There's differences between the novel and the movie because the book doesn't really feature a demon or an exorcism, and the primary villain was the Gemini killer in Karras' body, similar to Blatty's original cut of the third film. So, in the end, the book was less of an Exorcist sequel as much as it was a separate story that featured characters from the original. But what brings me back to the original question, because Legion is what Blatty considers to be the third part of what he calls his trilogy of faith. He put out The Exorcist in 1971, and Legion was published in 83, and in between those two, he had another novel called The Ninth Configuration in 1978. It concerned a large castle that is used as an insane asylum for military personnel and government employees, and the new head of the facility's unusual methods of curing the patients there. It's not a horror film, and it's more of a psychological thriller than anything, and doesn't involve any demons or exorcisms, but it does feature a character named Billy Cutshaw. He's played by Scott Wilson, and he's an astronaut that had a breakdown in the middle of a mission and is committed. And here's the hook. The character is the same as the astronaut from The Exorcist. His name isn't said in the movie, but it's explicitly stated in the book. And Blatty has said that it's the same character. And even though it's a different actor playing him, it's pretty obvious that it's meant to be the same guy. So, after he visits the McNeil's house for a party, he's told by little Reagan that he's going to die up there, and perhaps he takes that message to heart, because on his next mission, he has that complete breakdown, setting up the events for the Ninth Configuration. So, again, it's not like it's a direct sequel to the events of the film, but absolutely following up on consequences and occurrences within it. Question number 10.
Why does Kinderman call Karras his best friend?
Look, I love Exorcist 3, and I enjoy watching it probably as much as I do the original. But I can admit that it's flawed. And I think there's a bit that I don't really think is a flaw, but it's certainly a noticeable element. During the film, we follow Lieutenant Kinderman, and he was in the first film as well. Several times in the film, he reflects back on his experience from 15 years ago and mourns Damien Karras, saying he gets depressed on the anniversary of his death, and even says he loved him and that he was his best friend. But here's the thing, their relationship was minimal at best. In the first film, we see them meet for the first time, and it's not a very friendly meeting, considering that Kinderman partially treats Karras as a suspect in the murder of Burke Dennings, although it's clear that the lieutenant didn't really think that he did it. Their back and forth is playful, and at the end of the meeting, Kinderman asks Karras to the movies to hang out, but it seems like it's not taken up since They part with Damien not giving him the info he's requesting. We then see that the Lute is keeping his eye on the priest, but they don't really talk again. So where on earth is the idea that they were best friends coming from? So this requires a bit of behind-the-scenes discussion, but we'll see if we can transpose that into an on-screen explanation as well. But, like I mentioned earlier, Blatty himself directed Part 3 as opposed to Friedkin, and his intention wasn't really to make a sequel to The Exorcist. His main goal was adapting his book Legion, and adapting that one even if it contradicted what was seen before. You see, in the book of The Exorcist, there's more camaraderie between Karras and Kinderman, and the lieutenant is really looking for some sort of friendship. That's a little clearer in the film as well, since he asks Karras to the movies with him, but the book shows him to be a lonely sort of guy with no real friends outside of his family, but clearly someone that needs a movie and hangout buddy. In the novel, there's further discussion to develop their relationship to justify him calling Damien his best friend, and that's what Blatty was concerned with, so it didn't matter to him. But based on that, there's a reason to think that this may or may not be some sort of different continuity. After all, there's one or two other inconsistencies. Take, for example, the scene in which they're connecting all the murders. There's two people that are killed, the little Kintry boy and Father Canavan. They say that both deaths are linked to the original exorcism, and that Father Canavan is the one that signed off on the exorcism, allowing Karras to reach out to Marin. But in the original film, it wasn't Canavan, and it wasn't a father. He was a bishop. Technically, you can call a bishop father, but it would be more if you were talking directly to him. But if you were referring to him, you'd probably call him bishop. And the character in The Exorcist was Bishop Michael, and Michael is his last name. So it seems a different set of events. Then, in regards to the Kintry boy, it said that Karras gave the backwards talking tape to the university to analyze, and that the person that ended up figuring it out was Kintry's mother. But in the original, he doesn't drop it off. He's there with the guy analyzing it, and it sure as hell isn't someone's mother. And whereas little Thomas is black, this guy is most likely not. Now, there's a chance that Canavan wasn't the final say, and that he did authorize Karras to go ahead with the exorcism, but then had to get further say-so from Bishop Michael. And it's also possible that Kintry's mom was the one that figured out the backwards talk, and that Damon came in after they called him and told him that they had translated it. And we're just seeing this guy reveal the outcome of her work. Like, the guy taking credit for the woman's work. Like that never happens. But it could also just be a separate continuity, one where Karras and Kinderman were close. But let's just say that you want it all to be one solid universe with one set of events. Well, there's a possibility there too. You see, there's time in between when Kinderman meets Karras and that final set of scenes. There's not much time in terms of the film world, but it's not like it's the same day. There's at least several days in between their meeting and the priest's death. So who's to say that the two didn't end up going to that movie in there somewhere? It's possible that they did, had a nice time. And since he died right after, the cop fixated on their connection and realized that even though they had just met, that Damien represented the closest friendship that he had ever had. So, in a way, it's like how I think about my best friend, Tony Todd.
So there you have it. 10 questions about the Exorcist series. You've got it. Now, begone, bitch!
Dude. Again? Josh, what the fuck?
Father Barris, it looks like we've accomplished our mission.
Truly. Are you heading home now?
This I don't know if you noticed, but this is my home. Yeah. So no.
So, what is next for you?
Oh, for me, I don't know what's for me, but for you, if for you, it's pretty easy. If you really enjoyed what we did here, then obviously you're gonna like it.
Yeah.
You can send me a comment too, like just like if you have anything to say about what I said, like you can send me a comment. Please are allowed to comment. And then you're subscribed to my channel, right? I figured.
I'm meant to.
Go ahead and do it now.
Okay.
Click the bell, and then but the most important, you can become a member of my Patreon at patreon.com/movie timelines, and you can help support me so that I can continue to do my good work and spread the good word of the timelines.
The good
all
word.
around the
good
world.
word.
But yeah, thank you, Father, for
yes.
calling me. But now I must go to the bathroom.
Seriously, you could untie me before you leave.